Every single time I've reviewed how I've done a negotiation, I've realized that there was more money on the table. When they think they're going to give you an offer, a recruiter might ask you some tough questions. Your instinct is going to be, let me take this offer and negotiate against the other offer right away. What you actually want to do is there's a 3-step counter. First, so what do you do if you get a lowball offer if you're doing a tech negotiation? The first thing is, one thing that is very effective is a pre-agreement, but you want to use them sparingly. And what a pre-agreement is when you say, when they think they're going to give you an offer, a recruiter might ask you some tough questions even before you get an offer. Whenever you get a tough pre-offer question, you want to uncover why they're asking this instead of just blurting out an answer, because it's not as straightforward as you think it is. For example, if they ask, if we give you an offer, will you accept? They're not really asking, we expect you immediately to accept the offer if we give it to you. You want to figure out why they're asking that. Why they're probably asking that is because they want to make sure that you're actually winnable and you're not just using them as a pawn in a greater salary negotiation game with some other company that you're really going to take the offer at. If they ask you, if we offer this, will you accept? You might say, is that because you want to make sure that this is my top option? And yes, I'm still really excited about this company. And then pause and let them answer. And they might say, no, it's actually because we have 2 or 3 other candidates in the lineup. Or it might be because, like, we know that you used to make more at your last company. We're worried we're not going to be able to offer you as much. This is useful information that you're going to want to know. And so investigating is better than just answering. If they ask you, are you interviewing anywhere else? Then you want to handle this delicately too and uncover why. The real question they're trying to ask here is, are you winnable or are we going to have to outcompete someone? And if they ask you the salary expectation question again, what will you accept? You need to be able to prepare for this and make sure you can counter it. And usually it's by allowing them to make the first offer and say, we're going to figure things out from there. And if you ask them, can you explain a little bit more about why you're asking me that? The recruiter might say, we want to make sure that we're not going to give you an offer that you're going to get scared from because it's too low. Then you can reassure them that we're going to get to where we need to go because I really care about working at this company. In the pre-offer call, the goals are making sure that you show your interest, provide justification, and not a number at this point in time, but just reiterate the justification about why you're excited about the company, about why you have the relevant experience, all those things I talked about in your unique value. Pre-signal value. So if you are interviewing at other companies, you can slightly signal that, but not go into too much detail yet because you still have to do the counteroffer stage, which is when you will know a little bit more about how you're going to use those other offers. I'm a tech executive who's worked in Silicon Valley, Seattle, New York. If this is useful to you, please like this video for the algorithm so many more people can get value from it, or share it directly with someone who's about to look for a new job. The recruiter says, let's jump on another call. They're going to give you the offer. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you have just neutral reactions when they give you the offer. You don't want to be super excited or disappointed to any of the things that they're going to say to you. You want to make sure that they give you the details in writing. Some companies will push back and say, we don't give offer letters unless you're actually going to accept. But if you tell them these things can be really complicated, equity terms can be complicated, I want to make sure that everything's on the table and I'm going to go over this with one of my mentors or with my significant other, then please send it to me. Or you say, I'm going to write all this up and I'm going to send it to you as a confirmation to make sure that this is all correct. Then this makes it a little bit easier for you to use it as counteroffer evidence later if you really need to. Next, make sure you buy time so you can review it or maybe even get other counteroffers ready. And some of the best ways to do this are to buy time through getting more calls with the hiring manager or the executive on the function, saying that I need to review this with my spouse or my mentor. And you can talk about the scheduling that I'm going to need like 1, 2, 3 weeks to do this. It's going to be a really big part of my career and I need to make a decision very thoughtfully. And make sure you ask clarifying questions. If you say you're giving me 30,000 shares, what does that mean? Options, RSUs, how is that going to vest? How do you value it? What's the strike price? So many different questions are going to be needed and you want to make sure you get everything in detail. And every time they give you a new piece of information, that's another piece that you're going to be able to use in your negotiation. So for example, if they say this is a $400,000 a year offer, but then they're valuing the company higher than you're valuing the company, if it's a private company, then you might disagree with them on the valuation and be able to negotiate for even more equity or more cash. New info is powerful because there's a new reason to do a counter. And remember, once again, they need to like you, think you deserve it, justify it internally, and they need to still think that you're winnable. So be winnable. Okay, now you've done all that. You've talked to your mentor. You want to come back with a counter. I've been on both sides of the table for over a decade, and even I get stressed. That's why we offer one-on-one negotiation support with our experts at Valued. We've helped over 400 candidates like you, not just with advice. You get scripts, mock live negotiation simulations, and get real-time support. If you want to safely make the most of your negotiation, book a free strategy call at feelvalued.co. There's a 3-step counter. First, you want to prep your questions and and prep your pitch for yourself again, for what is your unique value, why you think that you want to get more equity or cash. You actually want to set up calls with the people who are going to be your advocates internally, your hiring manager and the executive or your skip manager. If you're able to come to them and say, here's my 6-month plan, I'm super excited about the role. Here are the various reasons why I think that I'm going to give you the outcome you want as high probability as you want it and with low risk and low effort on your part, then they're going to be much more inclined to be able to do exceptions for you. And you can explicitly ask them at the end of those calls, I'm going to be asking for more money here. Can you go to bat for me? And then finally, you send the counter to the recruiter. And you want to remind the advocates, the hiring manager or the skip, of your unique value. You want to talk about the outcome, probability, effort, risk. Here's my past success and impact. I've done this before. I've worked on this tech before. You can ask them, what do I really need to succeed on the job? So they understand that you're really engaged and you're thinking ahead. And you can give them my 30, 60, 90 or my 6-month plan for how I'm going to do really well on the job, decreasing the risk, increasing the probability that they're going to get a great outcome from you. And then, of course, you want to actually ask them to go to bat for you for higher compensation. Now, if you have multiple offers, your instinct is going to be, let me take this offer and negotiate against the other offer right away. What you actually want to do is take your top offer and negotiate that up first by itself. Then take that new top offer, take that to the other place, get them to beat it. And then you want to take that back around to the first offer to get even higher. This is actually where you're going to get the optimal gains to your offer. But of course, during all of this, you want to be very careful about what offers you put in front of what companies with what framing. You want to stay winnable. If you go to an early stage startup with a Google offer that's higher, they're going to say, there's no way we're going to be able to compete with Google. And it's not even a comparable opportunity. We're mission driven, we have high growth, et cetera, et cetera. You need to be able to frame the Google offer properly before you go to them so they're not A, scared off, and B, they understand how you're already adjusting the Google offer to be comparable to theirs. The other thing you want to know is, should I do this over the phone or should I do this via email? And there's no perfect answer. I've definitely seen people say you always do email or you always do the phone, but really it's personality dependent and it depends on how much you want to be able to negotiate up. So the first option is you can do all calls. You can do everything over phone with email confirmations like we talked about. This is my preferred method because honestly, the rapport you build over the phone, the ability to adjust if people are scared about you being a jerk or just using them as a leverage situation for another offer, you can actually adjust to those situations in real time, feel likable, be winnable, and also increase your ability to look like you deserve the compensation during the calls and restate things in a way you can't do it in an email. However, a lot of people are just get really nervous. They act emotionally. Even I've done this before. I've made really bad mistakes during negotiations, just saying the wrong emotional thing on the call. And I kicked myself later saying I should have just gone to email and have had to go back to email to actually recover after I've thought about it more. And luckily I was able to recover those negotiations, but that's not always the case. So if you want to go with emails, you do go with emails, but you need to make sure every email is preceded by some sort of call where you've made sure that they like you, they think you're winnable, that you have advocates like your hiring manager and your executive going to bat for you on the back end. So when you give the email with all the details, everything very well thought out, worded properly, that they're actually going to interpret that in the proper way and be willing to engage in the negotiation. So what do you do if you get a lowball offer if you're doing a tech negotiation? The first thing is you want to investigate why they're doing this. Specifically, you ask them, is this how much you think this role is worth? Or do you think specifically I'm worth this much based on implied interview performance, my experience, etc.? If they say it's about you specifically, you can try to move that back, maybe get another interview, maybe address some of their current concerns directly, but those are all things that are not on the table if you don't ask the question. If they say this is what this role is worth, then you might have to break their frame and say, this is the impact I'm giving. This is what the market says for this type of role and scope. You need to break your frame and adjust your compensation levels up if you're going to really be competitive in this market. Or you might say, if that's what you think this role is worth, then maybe I can take on more scope. Maybe I can interview for a level up because that's what I think I'm able to bring to the company. You might also want to use mirroring or labeling to be able to find out why the team gave you a specific score if you scored less. And this is taken right out of Never Split the Difference, which is a great book on negotiation by Chris Voss. And the way that you might do this with the labeling is say, if it seems like the team didn't feel I was great for this role or good enough for this role, and that's why you're giving me this lower compensation, can we dig into what the team's concerns are? Can I talk to more members of the team? Is there something else I can show you to make sure that you understand that I'm actually capable of doing this job and I'm worth this much? Mirroring doing is actually just repeating the last few keywords they said. So if they say the offer is $180,000 plus $20,000 in equity, you might say $180,000 plus $20,000 in equity. And then you pause and you wait for them to fill in the blanks. They might actually offer up, yeah, this is our compensation philosophy. You did this well in the interviews. They'll try and explain away why that number is exactly where it is, giving you lots of things to be able to counter. And that pause is important because it lets them solve the problem for you. And if you're trying to make them an exception to going outside the band, then you want to actually ask them, have you ever made exceptions to this before? Have you ever paid anyone more? Okay, tell me a little bit about that. That might not be exactly me, but tell me about those situations. And you might be able to uncover what is actually necessary to get an exception made and use that process for yourself. You don't always want to counter with just, I want this much more money. You might want to counter with, I think I deserve this much more money, but I'm willing to do these more interviews to show that I'm worth that much, that I'm worth this extra level. Or like, I think I should add this much more scope to my role when I come on board, and that's going to be worth this. And based on my past experience, I really think I can nail this new job at this new scope. So when you do the first counteroffer, you want to thank them for the first offer. Of course, you want to stay winnable. You want to stay likable. Identify that there is still a gap. You want to do that short, unique value pitch to reiterate how much value you bring to the company, why you're low risk and high probability of giving them a really great outcome. And then here, I usually like to leave it open, but some people like at this point to actually give a number, and that's usually their total compensation anchor. And then you want to leave it up to them a little bit about how they give you equity versus cash, because internally it might be easier for them to give equity or cash. If you really care about cash, then tell them I prioritize cash. And you don't really have to explain yourself, but if it's a startup that has some sort of risk for becoming liquid in their equity, then that's something you might want to bring up. And then of course, during your counters, you can also bring up the fact that I might be losing bonuses, investing at my last company, I'm up for a promotion, or I have other offers or interviews in the loop. You don't want to necessarily tell them the numbers here unless you think it's really going to be helpful. You can bring up market data if you don't have all that. And you can talk about the risks of being in a startup versus FANG, for example. Then they come back with an offer. They say last and final, et cetera, but you still want to be able to do a second counter offer. And then again, of course, you say thanks. You want to make sure that you can talk to your advocates again to go to bat for you to get extra if you really think that you still want to make more. And then at this point, if you think that you're really tapped out on salary and equity, you want to bring in some of those other elements. So you can suggest, what about a sign-on bonus? Or what about a one-time equity boost on top of your actual equity grant for just 1 year, or a guaranteed refresher in your second year? And then sometimes you'll want to counter number 3, and that's more typical if you have multiple companies bidding on you, or if you have some more complicated process to go through, or if they're really just not hitting the number you want and you feel like there is some reasonable extra ask for you to do. If you go to counters number 4, 5, 6, unless you're really highly valued, like an AI researcher who is coming out of a PhD program right at the top of the AI wave, then you might actually risk just decreasing how much they like you enough for them to disengage with the negotiation. And then you're going to have to go into recovery mode, which is much harder to do. The one thing you want to avoid during this entire process is ultimatums. Even if you want to walk away, do so with grace, because they may actually come back to you later. Things might change. Their budgets might change. Their second candidate might actually go take another offer. And an ultimatum will really just make them think a bit less of you for forcing them into this position. And honestly, they want to make sure that they're going to hire someone that they really like and respect when they're working with them. Now, one thing that is very effective is a pre-agreement, but you want to use them sparingly. And what a pre-agreement is when you say something like, I will sign if you offer X amount, which means that you're saying, I'm not going to counter if you give me another offer, and I'm not going to take anyone else's offer. I'm just going to sign. And usually you want to leave those options open for you, especially the signing with someone else, or if the other company comes in with a way higher offer and you really still want to work at this company, you want to negotiate things up. So there's a lower upside, but then there is a higher close rate. So if you're super concerned, let's say there's a market downturn or there's hiring freezes going on everywhere, and you really just want to close the deal, then you can use this tactic to be able to make the recruiter feel at ease. This is one way to alleviate their concern that they don't want to go through all of the exception process of going to the compensation committee, getting more data, et cetera, to give you a higher offer outside of the normal process if they don't think that you're really going to sign it. So this is a great way to do that little final step at the end, especially if they're making a big exception for you. So it's very effective to close. And usually you'll do this if you're really afraid that you're going to lose the deal, but it can limit your upside. So you should usually do this after you've already negotiated a bit and discovered their price. Things to look out for when you're doing a tech offer negotiation. Companies use many different tactics here. They will try to exhaust you. You've come so far. They'll use the fact that you've already done these interviews, that you're tired at the end, you just want to sign, you just want to say, I'm happy, I have a new job, thank goodness. But you've come this far, you've invested so much. So just investing a few more sentences, a couple more emails, a couple more phone calls can make you so much money over the course of your career. You might as well invest just this extra little amount at the end. It'll make such a big difference. Second, they'll try to use urgency. They'll pressure you, they'll ask you for answers. They'll say, you have to give us an offer acceptance in 2 days. You need to buy your time back. You need not be the decision maker. So I need to talk to my spouse. I need to talk to my mentor. If you have other processes going, you need to make them aware at the right time that those processes are going. And you want to make sure that you have things lined up properly. And you want to also go to those other companies and try and make them accelerate. But if you're at a startup, which takes 2 weeks to do interviews, and at Google, which takes up to 90 days to do interviews and to get you an offer, then you aren't going to line things up properly. So you need to be able to make sure that you buy more time. And if you're willing to walk away, you can buy a lot of extra time. They'll also try and play on your desperation. So they might come in super low and not want to engage in negotiations with you if they think you're really desperate. And sometimes that's just an emotional thing, or maybe you let it slip that your visa's running out or something like that. But you need to be okay with walking away in most circumstances. If this is useful to you, please like this video for the algorithm so many more people can get value from it, or share it directly with someone who's about to look for a new job. And then, of course, at the end of this, you want to accept your highest value offer. That's the offer that has the highest value to you, not just total compensation. And finally, you want to rest and watch the sunrise on a grateful universe and be happy about your new job. And if things didn't go perfectly, that's totally fine. Learn from the things you did well and not well during this negotiation, and be ready for the next time you're going to negotiate when it's going to be for an even higher value. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.